Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be building a Christmas card using this Concord 9th fill-in Posies stamp set. Now this isn't exactly a Christmas stamp set, but I'm showing you today how you can use it to build some really fabulous Christmas cards. Here's one card that I've already created. I've just used it by stamping out the background and doing some embossing on top. And I'm going to kind of use the same layout, but using a lot of the die cuts. Now I also got the coordinating dies. These go with this stamp set, but I thought that these are fabulous dies that you could use all on their own to create your own cards as well. You don't necessarily need the stamp set to use these dies. I'm going to be using a lot of the dies on this card. I don't think I even used any of the stamps, so you can definitely use the stamps and the dies on their own. Here I'm just showing you I cut out a lot of these dies using some Brutus Monroe Marcella cardstock with some liquid elements sprayed on top. Now this liquid elements is sort of new in the Brutus Monroe store. They had it a while ago and then they kind of re-released it. And I just love these liquid elements. They shine so bright, especially on dark cardstock. I'm also using some die cuts that I cut out of Brutus Monroe glitter stock. Now this is their glitter cardstock paper that I absolutely love because the glitter does not come off. You don't get glitter all over your craft room and all over yourself. And I just used one of their lighter colors. I also cut out many of those leaves with some Jurassic cardstock, and I also cut out one flower that I thought would be sort of the focal point for my card. So now that I have a ton of die cuts cut out, I didn't even use all of them, so I could probably go ahead and create another card. I'm just going to be layering them on the front of my card, kind of where I want them to go, and just see how things are going to flow. And after I was kind of happy with the way things are laid out, I'll go ahead and start building the rest of my card, gluing it down and putting my background together. I'm also going to be using this friend die. I love this friend die because all the letters are connected. You don't have to cut them all out separately. You just run it through your die cutting machine once and you have all these separate little letters. So I just ran it through with some of my black cardstock that also had a little bit of that liquid elements squirted on top, and I just really love the look that it gave to those letters. Now I did notice that the letter D on my cardstock, I cut it out of a section of the cardstock that I already had die cut on, so the D had some issues. So I cut out another one, and I'm adding a little bit more of that liquid elements on top to kind of help it fit in with the rest of the letters. Now it doesn't have quite the same pattern of liquid elements on top, but you can't really tell after the card has been put together. So now that I have all my die cut pieces together and ready, I'm going to be building my background, and I wanted it to kind of look like a frosty kind of background, a frosty frame around my card. So I'm taking some of my alabaster white pigment ink and just ink blending it right on the edges. And I did speed this up a little bit because it's just some ink blending, some really simple ink blending around the edges. But I'm just using a regular ink blending tool and a foam blender, just going around the outside and really trying to blend it together and not have a lot of those harsh little lines that you sometimes get. But even though there are some harsh little lines, you don't really see it when everything's on top, and I'm going to be doing some splattering as well with the liquid elements, so it really helps it blend in. So I'm grabbing my liquid elements again. I can't say how much I love these liquid elements. I just think they're so much fun. And I just want to take my spray nozzle out, and I'm going to be using the end of it just to put some splatters on my cardstock. Now this does leave sort of bigger splatters, which is totally okay, but I also wanted to get a variation of the size of splatter, so I also grabbed my Brutus Monroe water pen or water brush, and I used that to add splatters as well. After I started using these Brutus Monroe water brushes, I was really surprised at how well they actually splatter paint and different things, and so they're kind of my go-to when I want to add splatters to any kind of project anymore. They just make a lot of splatters and a really nice size, so I like using those for this technique. So I'm just adding a lot of little splatters of liquid element just until I think it's really got a lot of texture going on and a lot of shine on this background because that's really what I wanted it to look like. I had thought about using white splatters to kind of make it look like snow, but I just love these liquid elements and I wanted it to kind of match with all of the other die cuts that I have on the card already that have some of this gold shimmer on it, and I just really loved how it turned out. So now my background is done and I hit it with my heat tool so it could dry, and I am just going to start gluing all of my die cuts down. Now this is kind of a tedious job and it takes a little while, but one thing I wanted to know is getting my letters on here straight. I just lined up my background with my grid mat underneath my mixed media mat, and I use my little Brutus Monroe 6-inch ruler to kind of just make sure they're straight. And so once those are glued down, I'm going to start adding all of my little floral die cuts, and the little flower here I want it to be sort of more of a focal point. So I'm popping that up with foam adhesive before I'm going to start gluing everything behind. So I'm just arranging all of my die cuts, and one thing I did with the leaves here is I kind of creased them in the center so that they would pop up a little bit and give a little more dimension. I just like doing this so they don't look quite as flat as they do without a crease in the center, and I think it really added a little bit more interest to all of the flowers and the die cuts here. So I am just going ahead and arranging things again. I know I did it in the beginning, but it changes every time I do another step on the card, and I just wanted to see, get another visualization of how things were going to go. So I'm just laying them all out before I go ahead and glue them down. So all of this little die cut and piecework, it does take a little bit of time. So I was actually very thankful that my kids took a good nap on this day that I was creating this card, and I was able to finish it from start to finish. Once I have everything in place, I'm actually going to start tearing it apart again to put all of my glue on these little pieces, and I am using my Brutus Monroe craft glue, and I love this glue because it dries fairly quickly but not too quick, so it still gives you a little bit of wiggle room. And I have on my Brutus Monroe bottle there a little fine tip applicator so that it's really easy to get it on these little die cuts and just put a little bit of glue behind word dies and sentiment dies and add just a tiny bit for sequins. So I am adding a few black sequins around my little cluster of flowers here, and these are sequins that are left over from a Scrappin' for Less kit, and I have a video for that I did fairly recently, so that's on my channel as well. I'm going to add another sentiment here to kind of support that friend that I have on there. And this is another Brutus Monroe stamp set, and I'm just adding this one tiny sentiment. I'm going to emboss it on a strip of black cardstock and just put it right over that friend sentiment. So I'm adding some Brutus Monroe embossing ink on top of this stamp and just stamping it onto some of that same black cardstock that I cut out the friend with, and then I'm going to emboss it in my Brutus Monroe alabaster embossing powder. And I love this powder because it's so super fine and it can emboss tiny sentiments like this one, and you have a clean, crisp sentiment. You don't have to worry about it all kind of melting together. So you can still have really tiny sentiments, and it just does a fantastic job embossing. So after I have that embossed sentiment done, I'm just going to cut it down into a little strip, and then you'll see I'm going to go ahead and layer it right on top of those friend die cut letters. So just cutting it down, I just want it to be a really thin strip so it doesn't take up too much room and you can still read the letters that are underneath. And I really like this technique. I think it just looks really kind of different and unique. So I'm just cutting a little bit of foam adhesive. I'm cutting a tiny strip to go behind my sentiment here. Now, since my flower is already popped up on foam adhesive, I don't want to put this strip on foam adhesive on top of that as well as on top of the friend letters because it's going to be different heights. So I'm trying to map out here where I need my foam adhesive to start. And I'm kind of just measuring it and holding that that starting point with my fingers, and then adding foam adhesive on this side that's going to go over those friend letters. And on the other side that goes on top of the flower, I'm just going to add a little bit of liquid adhesive, and this way the sentiment is the same height all the way across, and you get a really nice support with that foam adhesive, but it's the same height. So if you're kind of struggling with how to do sentiments on top of different heights, this is just a little trick I use when I'm doing this technique. And it does help if you remember to pull off the backing paper. I was starting to glue it down and I thought, oh wait, I don't have the backing paper pulled off. So go ahead and pull that off first before you go and adhere it down. So once I had it in place, I just made sure I pressed it down really good so it would stay. I trimmed off the edges of that sentiment so that it would be just flush with the sides, and then I went and I just adhered my card panel down onto a black cardstock card base. And that is the card. It's super fun. I love the way it turned out with all of that gold, and even though it took me pretty much an afternoon to finish this card, I definitely think it's worth it. So I wanted to give you just a quick peek at some of these fun Brutus Monroe items and how you can build a Christmas card with a not really Christmas themed stamp and die set from Concord 9th. So thanks so much for watching. I'll have more links and descriptions at my blog if you care to stop over there. Otherwise, have a great day, and I will catch you next time. Bye.